core focus of the book is obviously all those other issues exist, but beyond ideology, strategy, economy and resources, do emotions and ethics really have certain autonomous velocity in mass mobilizations today? That is the key question, which is not to deny the role of rest of the factors, but there is perhaps a need in the current majoritarian impasse to locate certain social space, certain space in our collective imagination that people can be mobilized through emotions, through ethics, and that's a very elusive, those are very elusive categories. So how does that happen? So that was it's a kind of very preliminary attempt to also argue that emotions are neither beyond interest nor emotions are necessarily irrational. That emotions are people's evaluative. Also, emotions are not merely experiential, but they're also evaluative. That people evaluate, make sense of reality, because we are entering into modern, complex, post-Westphalian societies, which are nation states, which are global. The people find it very difficult to make sense of some of the changes that are happening in terms of economy, in terms of breakdown of social structure. And people find alternate ways of making sense of this reality, and that's where I feel that everyday open-ended ethics, everyday experience, emotions are the way people evaluate and make sense of what is happening around them. And that's where perhaps right has had an advantage in some sense of locating their ideological framework rooted in everyday experiences and everyday emotions. Why should that be is a great historical question. Can left, secular, democratic, progressive parties reproduce that model in a different way? Can be another very important question. Do positive emotions of love, care, compassion, are they as open to mobilizational capacities as those of hatred and other kinds of emotions that right generally mobilizes? Those were the questions that really interested me in this book. And that is where I felt that that there are certain elusive things that we have been witnessing which have to be made sense of. One, I agree with many of the panelists where they said that neoliberalism and rise of Hindutva are coterminous. This version of Hindutva, aggressive Hindutva and rise of neoliberalism, rise of new middle class as Ketkarji pointed out, global capital as Manojji was pointing towards, undoubtedly true. But just to pause and see that if one were to believe that people were angry with Congress in 2014 because of economic reforms, because of poor implementation of welfare policies of MNRG, how does one explain the fact that the same people who are angry with neoliberalism votes back a more aggressive neoliberal, more pro-corporate, more ruthlessly capitalist political party in place? Therefore, obviously, neoliberalism by itself can put a frame in place, but by itself cannot explain what is happening today. That people are angry with neoliberalism, but people vote more pro-corporate. That's happened even in the United States. People were unhappy with the Rust Belt crisis of the white working class, then voted Trump, who is even more pro-corporate, even more corrupt than the previous government. So how does one explain this? Obviously, there is something that is elusive about modern complex societies. It is not so linear, it is not so binary. So that's one of the starting points of my inquiry in the book, that something else must be happening which can explain this kind of a very diabolical situation that people seem to be working against their own self-interest. That we all are able to see this very clearly, that what has happened to economy, what has happened to institutions, what happened to democracy, media. But people might still, in spite of all this, even the three panelists would say 2024, we are not sure. It can still be a pro-Modi vote. We are still saying, is it 50 votes, it is 60 seats, could it be even, some are saying that it might even go beyond 300. We don't know. None of us sitting here, we are sure of the damage the current government has done on all parameters of human development, happiness index. Look at unemployment, 45 years. Media, democracy has dropped us on the democracy index. But still, the question remains, when come 2024, we are not sure. This should tell us something deep is happening in democracies, not in India. I think this is a global phenomenon. We just got the results in Turkey of Mr. Erdogan coming back with 52%. And Turkey had a similar experience, Manoj, 45 years, worst unemployment, economies, highest inflation that Turkey has ever, high rate of displacement. People have voted back Erdogan. So which may not be, hope not. We are hoping against hope. That's not case. So there is something deep churning happening. Therefore, I think we have to really dig deep. Our old social categories of analysis somewhere are proving to be inadequate. And we need to, I think, innovate a new set of categories. And I think Hindutva, therefore, I would argue, and that is my critique of the category of Islamophobia, is that Hindutva cannot be limited to Islamophobia. Hindutva is a larger project of reconfiguring social power the way it's working. And in that sense, I would argue the excessive focus on Islamophobia is actually a red herring, that they would want us to keep our eyes focused and glued on this anti-Muslim bashing, while they are reconfiguring on the ground question of caste, question of class, question of rural, urban, gender, religion, ethnicity, nationality. Otherwise, there is no reason why there should be so much of violence in Manipur today. It's not a Hindu-Muslim violence that's happening in Manipur. So Hindutva has to be seen, whether we like it or not, as an alternative social framework. They are providing an alternative, regressive, illiberal social form. But the danger is that there might be historical scope for us to get a durable social consent. As Manoj rightly said, elections cannot be our only criteria. And that is where I think we need to raise new set of historical questions as to social, democratic, left, regional, secular parties might need to re-innovate some of the social categories. And that is where I think Comrade Raja has pointed out that that my emphasis on the question of solidarity. That today perhaps is a historical context where we'll have to redefine justice not merely as equality, but justice as solidarity. That how do you bring contesting social groups, and that is what is the strength of Hindutva. That what Hindutva does is that it brings conflicting social groups under a common umbrella of Hindu identity. To what extent it is working, how durable is it, how deep is it, is a question that one can debate. But today they have proven at least a case that a Dalit can also be a Hindu. You can be Dalit for the purposes of gaining representation, and you can be Hindu to gain purpose of recognition. So what we thought are dichotomous binary oppositions, Hindutva has reworked it into a non-disruptive continuity. And this, I think we need to take that project seriously, because it is speaking to certain contemporariness. I don't have the time, but the book does hopefully some part of it. And that is where I think we need to revisit this question of solidarity. As you, sir, rightly pointed out, I think Dr. Ambedkar was prescient in many of his foresights in terms of the return of the kind of counter-revolution that Dr. Ambedkar spoke of. It is perhaps what we are witnessing today. That what he cautioned, that is continuous emphasis on the idea of fraternity. So my question, one of the questions is that what is that concrete social form of fraternity? So that is my lament of regional parties, Manoj, not my dismissal of regional parties, that regional parties will have to, because of their vernacular character, they will have to play a much larger role. That what would this coming together of caste groups, what is coming together of religious groups that we rhetorically talk as secularism, what does it mean on the ground? Does it mean common neighborhood? Does it mean more interreligious marriages? Does it mean more intercaste marriages? I don't think we have clarity. But Hindutva has a certain clarity of a regressive, hierarchical, well-defined social form. But we do not know what our social form is, how to bring these contesting groups which suffer from rhetorical mutual prejudices. Today, what is happening in Uttar Pradesh, what I was talking to Manoj, that conflict between OBCs and Dalits is at the heart of the way BJP is able to reconfigure. Our secular language disallowed us that space to articulate these rather uncomfortable questions. We bracketed them all under a secular rubric. But now, again, one can ask why now? Again, that has a long historical process. under the Nehruvian era, I think the social gap was so high that that kind of an accommodative character of Congress worked. Today, thanks to 70 years of democracy, again thanks to Nehru, Gandhian constitutional vision, there has been a secular social democratization that has happened. That groups are vying for, in a different way. And that's why we need a different language. That old kind of accommodative politics of accommodation of the centrist kind, centrist liberalism is not working. And this is a crisis of centrist liberalism across globe, not just in India. So it is not, so we'll have to reinvent and Gandhi and Nehru. I don't think Gandhi, Nehru will have answers to the questions that we are picking up today. Gandhi and Nehru were relevant in their own times. They were universalists of their times. They talked of questions of justice. They would continue to remain relevant, but I don't think they will provide us ready-made answers to the kinds of new, sharper challenges we are facing on ground. And that is why we need to reinvent them. And that the book is a very, very, very preliminary attempt in terms of looking at this question. These new questions have come on board, and it is time that we tackle them as part of our counter-majoritarian agenda. That's where I'll stop here. Thank you.